Very warm welcome to all of you and a very good morning. I hope you all had a great weekend. This is C. Ridhima Bhatia, and today we are going to do your second heads of income from house property. So I hope everyone is settled in, and while we start our second head of income from house property. So as you all know, there are five heads of income from salaries, income from house property, profits and gains of business or profession, income from capital gains, and income from other sources. So this second head, I think it's a very easy one, a very nice one to understand. So let's begin. All my students, Bhumika, Darshan, Shubham, Diksha, Kriti, Sushil, Komal, Ishan, a very good morning. Thank you so much, Kavita. Now, what is income from house property? What do we understand this term by income from house property? Abhi tak what we have been given to understand prima facie, we think that let out se jo aa raha hai na, as in rental income se jo aa raha hai, that is income from house property. Now the beauty of this particular head is that it's just not include the rental income, it includes the annual value. In this particular head, the annual value of that property would be charged. Now you would be like, ma'am, what are you saying? What is annual value? Annual value. Property ka value ka annual value. But let's first understand from the chargeability perspective. Now, as you know, that each head of income has its own chargeable or the charging section. This section particularly tells about what type of income would be charged under a particular head in a particular year. So like when you saw salaries, you saw that an income from the employment is charged under the head salaries on due or receipt basis, whichever is earlier, correct? Now the charging section of my house property says that the annual value, the annual value of the property shall be charged under this section, provided you are the owner of that property. Provided you are the owner of the property. So section 22 says the owner of the property shall offer the annual value of the property as income under the head house property. Now, first most important question is, what is actually a house property? When we think about house property, we immediately have an image that it's a residential property given on rent to families or to employees and all that thing stuff. Correct. So this is what image which pops up in your mind. But actually, house property, my friend, is any structure building, whether now that house property is let out for commercial purpose or residential purpose, that does not matter. But a house property is a proper structure, as in four walls, one roof, there is a structure that becomes a house property. It's not necessarily has to be a house. So house property को समझने के लिए differentiate yourself from a residential property. We are talking about a house property. And when I say house property, you should have a clarity in mind that it is any building coming or any land apparent there too. Building or land apparent there too. Now, first question would be, ma'am, building to samajh aa gaya. What is land apparent there too? So many a times you've seen when we purchase house, sometimes the small parking area is there with it, or sometimes the garden area is there, or sometimes the garage area is there. It may not be very common when we talk about it in India, but when we talk about it in US or any other country, there is backyard area, this front yard area, there is garage to it, right? So that all becomes land apparent to the building, that is land connected with the building. So land connected with the building. So one thing is pretty much clear that when we talk about income from house property, we are talking about a building or a land happening there too. So next question would come, ma'am, only land is not house property? Yes, only land is not house property. Hence, vacant land है, उससे कुछ income आ रहा है, would never go under the head income from house property, because यहाँ पे income from property as in a structure building, I'm not saying building of many floors, there should be a four wall and a roof thing to understand that it's a proper building, and a land apparent there too would become income from house property. A godown is an income from godown, or the annual value of godown is income from house property. Annual value of factory is an income from house property. So you have to be clear with the concept of building or the concept of house property. Another important criteria is that you should be the owner of that property. Ownership is extremely important, as in the legal title is extremely important. You should be the owner of that property for you to offer income under the head income from house property. So A, if A lets out a property to B, A lets out the property to B, and A is the owner, so he would offer the income from house property under the particular head. And what would be the income? The annual value. House property क्या होगा? Any building or a land apparent there too. One more important thing, that A should be the owner, which we got it. But now suppose A let out the property to B, and B further let it out as in sublet the property to C. Up C is giving an income of rent again to B. Just because it's a rental income would not make it an income from house property. The criteria is there should be a house property and you should be the owner. But B in this case is not the owner. He's a subletter. He's a subletter. So in this case, B would not offer the income under the head income from house property. He might offer it under the head PGBP on income from other sources, but not income from house property because he is not the owner. Yes, A, whatever is receiving from B, would definitely offer it under the head income from house property because owner and building dono criteria hai. Now, the ownership criteria has to be seen in the previous year, not in the assessment year. In the previous year. Now you will say, ma'am, what's in the previous year? Now suppose A is earning an income from B of rental property, and A is the owner during the previous year 22-23. Now he sells the property in financial year 23-24, but which is your AY 23-24. But now A cannot contest that I am not the owner in the assessment year, so I will not offer the income under the head income from house property. No, A is the owner in the year when he was earning the income, and that is sufficient criteria for charging it under the head income from house property. So the ownership should be in the previous year. Its relevancy does not matter in the assessment year. Okay. Next question, it is extremely important that you might be having is, कि ma'am A ने B को वो property let out किया and B is using it for the purpose of business. As in, मेरा एक shop था, अब now shop comes under the head income from house, qualifies to be your house property. I let out that shop to B, and B is running a mobile business on it. Does that matter? No, it does not matter to me. If I've let it out and the other person is doing any commercial activity, it does not matter. As I told you previously, that when you are letting it out, whether it's used for residential purpose or whether it's used for commercial purpose, it does not matter. But the usage does matter when I talk from the perspective of owner. if A is using the property himself, self usage है, and that self usage is for business or profession, as in A ने उस shop पे, A in that shop is running his own business, is running his own business, then the annual value of that property would not be considered as income from house property. What did I say? Yeah, self usage है, and वो usage है for the purpose of business or profession of the owner itself. That means he's using that property for the purpose of business and profession, and उससे जो income आएगा, he would be offering it under the head income from business or profession. So that becomes an exception to the chargeability section, and it would not be considered as income from house property, self usage and use for business or profession of A. सामने वाले को when I let out whatever purpose he is using it for does not matter. But if the person himself is using it for business or profession, अब वो खुद को rent थोड़ी ना देगा, right? वो notional rent का वहां पे concept नहीं आएगा, and that would not be considered as income from house property because it's an exception and the value of it would not be considered as income from house property. So अभी तक हमने क्या पढ़ा? Section 22 would cover the income from house property in the form of annual value for house property of which you are an owner. And ownership is an important criteria for charging it under Section 22. You can be an owner based on freehold rights or leasehold right, that does not matter. You have to be the owner in the previous year. You being an owner in the assessment year or not, again, does not matter. Clear? Second thing is that if it is let out for business purpose, it would still be an income from house property. But if the owner himself is using it for the purpose of business or profession, for his own purpose of business or profession, that would not be counted as a property for which you have to consider an annual value to offer under the head income from house property. यहाँ तक किसी को कोई डाउट? So Bhumika says, ma'am, land given for rent for non-commercial purpose or for commercial purpose, both will not come under the head income from house property. Correct. एक vacant land, मतलब land पे कोई structure नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, उसको मैंने दे दिया for say for shooting, उससे जो income आएगा it can go under PGVP or other sources, but not house property. And if a land is given to farmer on monthly rent, that again would not come under the head income from house property. And but if the land is apparent to a building, that is attached, you can use apparent or connected with the building. वो आप जब let out करोगे, वो it would become your income from house property. And if a house property is used for business and the other half is let out, then also my friend other half would become, अगर वो sufficient unit है खुद में, other half would become your income from house property and remaining other half को you will not consider. Now, abhi tak I was purposely using the term let out, let out, let out, let out. But let me tell you one thing, my friend. The concept does not say rental income. The concept of chargeability is not saying anywhere that the rental income of the property has to be charged. कि आपने let out किया या rent पे दे दिया, उसका income has to be charged. The concept says the annual value of house property would be charged in the previous year. The concept and all of the focus, rather, today's class would be all about understanding the annual value and computation of house property. Now, what is annual value, ma'am? Annual value means एक house property की का income generating capacity है for a year? What is that property capable to generate as an income for the year? So house property is ultimately divided into three types, friends. Whenever you get a chance to see an income tax form, a let out property, as you know that we have let it out, a self-occupied property, and a deemed let out property. तो इसको हम प्यार से एलओपी बोलेंगे, इसको सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड को एसओपी एंड डीएलओपी. ओके. Now, let out property, what we understand, it has been let out. You will receive the rent for the year for the same. Self-occupied property means a property which is used for self, which is used for self. अब used for self में मैम आपने बोला था कि वो तो exclude करना है from the computation of house property. No, I told when it is used for self and that self is for the business purpose. But if it is used otherwise for self, not for the business purpose of the SSC, then it is a house property or self-occupied property की the annual value will go under the head income from house property. I told you annual value को याद रखना कि एक property का what is an income generating capacity for a particular year. उसका annual value मतलब सालाना value मतलब per year value कितना है is what we have to consider. So self-occupied property को if I say is a property in which the SSC resides, number one, or if he has not occupied it during the year. Not occupied because of what? Not occupied because of him being into different city or different state because of employment or because of your profession or business, that becomes a self-occupied property. And self-occupied property is a property which is used for self, residing in it, or you are unable to use it, and unable to use the reason is because you are staying because of your business or employment in some other city. An example. So I have a house property in Delhi and in Mussoorie. Now, since my core area of work is in Delhi, I reside in this property, and the Mussoorie house is not occupied, and दोनों को self occupied माना जाएगा, दोनों को self occupied माना जाएगा. So either with a property which is occupied by the SSC himself during the year, not for the purpose of business or profession, or a property which is not occupied due to the business or employment of him being into some other city. हाँ, मैं साल में थोड़ा time maybe for holiday I go and I come back, but still this Mussoorie house would be considered as self-occupied. You will not contest to the AO that यहाँ पे तो self-occupied था ही नहीं, ये तो खाली था, नहीं. Occupied by self or not occupied because of the reason. ठीक है. Now यहाँ पे one beauty is of self-occupied property is we will see that you can only claim up to two properties as self-occupied. You can only claim up to two properties as self-occupied. मैम अगर जैसे अब बहुत सारे सेलिब्रिटीज का घर हर स्टेट में होता है, इनफैक्ट आउट ऑफ इंडिया भी होता है, सो मैम व्हाट विल दे डू, बाकी का क्या करेंगे? बाकी गोज माय फ्रेंड इनटू द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डीमिंग प्रोविजंस. नाउ एज यू विल गो फर्दर, डीमिंग प्रोविजंस क्या होते हैं? There are deeming provisions in lots of sections. Deeming provisions are the provisions which prima facie seems that they are not applicable, but they are deemed to be or assumed to be a house property or assumed to be an owner or assumed. अब जैसे deemed ownership का concept आएगा, that is assumed to be the owner. ऐसे deemed let out का property का मतलब है assumed to be a let out property. So as I told you, यहाँ पे start के through that only two properties are allowed to be self-occupied. Remaining will go under DLO. As in your deemed let out property. Ma'am, कैसे होगा, क्या होगा? You guys have to wait. I just told you the concept that there would be 2-3 situations coming more, but just be prepared. We will go everything one by one. First, our focus would be to understand how do you compute the income of a let out property. Then we will understand how do you compute the income of a self-occupied property. Let out property में थोड़ा सा time लगेगा, उसके बाद self-occupied is extremely easy. Then we'll come to DLOP and then we'll come to some more criteria. So those who have already understood the concept of house property, please ask your questions according to the topic which we are covering. Okay. And once all is done, then you will be pro in it. Okay. So now let's understand the concept of annual value of house property in the type of let out property. Guys, one more thing I would like to say here is that each head of income has its own charging section, we know, but there is its own method to compute the income. Why segregation of income is extremely important when it comes to different heads, because different heads allows different types of computation. Salary ke liye, so the computation goes like you have to pick component by component and you have to see what amount is chargeable to tax, as in what amount is taxable and what amount is not taxable. Allowances ke liye you calculate exemption, perquisites ke liye you calculate the value, and then in addition, after the deduction under section 16, you get your income from salary. House property के लिए there is a separate computation. I cannot say कि let out property का मतलब है जितना कभी मैंने let out किया, जितना भी rent आया into 12 would be my income from house property. No, there are certain way through which you will be calculating and computing the income from house property. Now, first of all, my friends, to compute income from house property for a let out property, how do we compute it? As I told you that annual value of the property is charged to tax. So the first important thing is we have to calculate the gross annual value. The gross annual value. Usme se we will be reducing municipal taxes. One by one, we'll pick up every element. We'll come to net annual value. Usme se we will be reducing some deductions under section 24. जिसमें there are two types of deductions, A and B. A is standard deduction. You don't have to copy it right now. And B is interest on the property during the year. And it would result in my income from house property. कुछ भी नहीं है. So first focus of ours would be to compute to compute the gross annual value. Uske baad, step by step, we will move to each thing. Now, what is the gross annual value? Now, gross annual value ko compute karne ka tarika is given under section 23 of the Act. What is the gross annual value? उस property का, I told you annual value is an income generating capacity. अब अगर आप सोचो, people, if gross annual value would be equal to the rent they have received, then people can manipulate that figure. मैं rent एक property से ले रही हूँ at 10,000 per month, but I make sure it कि rent received actually is only 5,000 or 6,000 per month, right? So there has to be a check so that people offer the true value and unnecessary do not overhype it to claim benefits like interest or etc. And unnecessary do not underhype it. They give a proper value which should be as per the law. So the should be value as per the law is based on a factor called expected rent. यानी एक property से एक expected rent कितना है versus the actual rent. Actual rent is the rent which you are receiving during the year. So एक property से what is the expected rent and we'll compare it with the actual rent. इसमें से जो भी higher होगा, if you are earning more than the expected value, then that is the gross annual value. If you're earning less than the expected value, then expected rent would be your gross annual value. Expected rent for the year and actual rent again also for the year. So, क्योंकि this department say think that why would someone offer a property at a lower value? So उस case में they think that something is fishy. That's why expected rent is taxed. Okay. So actual rent, you know what is the rent you're receiving it for the year. What is the rent you are receiving for the year? Now expected rent is a question mark कि मैम expected rent कैसे निकालेंगे? Expected rent means the rate that should be. The rent that should be. Now you will be asking, ma'am, how would this be calculated? My friends, this is calculated based on three criteria. One is mhm, one is municipal value. Another thing is fair market value. And another thing is standard rent. Now you will be like, ma'am, what are these? Municipal value is the value just the municipal authorities taxes लगाते हैं. You must have heard the concept of property tax or house property tax or what is that? That is calculated based on the municipal value. Municipality, how they come to a house property tax for the year. For that, they take a municipal value for the year. फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू मीन्स उस प्रॉपर सेम प्रॉपर्टी का सेम एरिया में सेम पीरियड में क्या रेंट चल रहा है. ओके, सो फॉर सेकंड फ्लोर ऑन in 26 block is for x amount, then and what is the second floor value of that particular or of that particular area in the same block, is that what is the fair market value. Next is standard rent. Now, standard rent matlab rent as per Rent Control Act. Now, Rent Control Act is a state matter whereby what happens, it's a check on the landlord so that landlord does not compute or take exorbitant value of rent from you. They don't exploit you. So, standard rent is a stoppage by the Rent Control Act that this is the maximum rent that you can charge for the property for that particular area. So what would be the expected rent out of these three items? You have to see all, compare it, and then you have to come to the value of expected rent. First of all, I will compare it with the municipal value and the fair value. यानी जो municipality value लगा रही हूँ, जो market में rate चल रहा है, whichever is higher. Whichever is higher. But as I told you, standard rent is the maximum rent. That means the higher of the municipal or the fair value is restricted to the maximum of standard rent. That means whatever comes from the higher of municipal and fair value, I have to compare it with the standard rent, and whichever would be lower has to be taken, and that lower amount would become my expected rent. So I'll repeat again, gross annual value is the income generating value of a property. Now, if I assume that a property is let out for the entire year, then what would be the gross annual value? We cannot directly say that jo rent received hua, that is the gross annual value. We have to compare it. We have to compare it what? We have to compare the actual rent with the expected rent. Expected rent matlab that the rent that should be. That the rent that should be is dependent upon three factors: municipal value, fair market value, and standard rate. Whatever amount is higher of municipal and fair would be compared or restricted to the standard rent. And that means I have to pick up the higher of municipal or fair value, and whatever value comes, I have to compare it with the standard rent, and whichever is the lower would become my expected rent. Then obviously I have to compare the expected rent with the actual rent, whichever is higher is my GAV. Now, let me take you through example. अब इन सब केसेस में let's see what would be the gross annual value. House 1 में friends, house 1 में municipal value is 80,000, fair rent is 90,000. Fair rent and municipal value में which is higher? 90. Compare it with standard rent. Now standard rent is not available. होता है guys कि बहुत बारी standard rent is not available. That does not mean that 90 and 0 में lower 0 होगा. 0 नहीं है. ये applicability नहीं है वहाँ पे rent control act की, whatever is the situation. So then 90,000 becomes your expected rent. Your actual rent was 72,000. So expected rent and actual rent में which is higher? The expected rent. Expected rent becomes the gross annual value. So इस case में GAV would be 90,000. Next में guys 55 and 60 में 60. 60 and 75 में again 60. 60 and 72 में, so expected rent would be 60 here. 60 and 72 में 72. So 72K becomes the gross annual. House 3, 4, 5 का quickly एक बारी करो and tell me if there is any confusion. Take a minute and tell me. So first of all exams में हम कैसे करेंगे? Exam में हम gross annual value जो भी मैंने लिखा, this part would be your main body of answer. Gross minus municipal taxes, net annual value, deductions, standard deductions, interest. Gross annual value कैसे निकाला would be part of your notes, or you can write it under inner column, whatever suits right. Gross annual value notes में जाएगा तो आप बोलोगे as per section 23 the gross annual value is expected rent of the actual rent whichever is higher. How do you calculate expected rent? You will show them, and what is the actual rent, then you will show that what is the gross annual value. So please साथ साथ एग्जाम में लिखने का तरीका also adapt करो. Okay, house 3, 4, 5 पे कोई doubt guys? $60, $30 and $78. Very good Bhumika, very good Diksha. Let out property Krishna, we have discussed it. Very good Komal. So everyone is getting it right. Good, good. सुशील, लैंड से कोई भी इनकम आ रहा है, it would not be your income from house property until and unless that land is connected to a building or a part of a building. Simple. और बिल्डिंग होने के लिए एक स्ट्रक्चर होना बहुत जरूरी है. अगर बी एंड डी पे ली हुई हो तो लैंड. खुशी, व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन? ठीक है. So I hope it got clear to everyone that how do we compute the GAV. आगे बढ़े. अभी सिर्फ हम लेट आउट प्रॉपर्टी का कर रहे हैं. प्लीज डू नॉट आस्क एनी अदर क्वेश्चन अदर देन एलओपी. वी विल टेक ऑल द क्वेश्चंस बट अभी एलओपी से रिलेटेड ही क्वेश्चन. So once the gross annual value is out, अभी तक आपके माइंड में क्वेश्चन आ रहा होगा कि मैम ये कोई निकालता है प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में? Practical life में students, people have a tendency that they give actual rent as the gross annual value. They do not think कि actual, because they have an impression that they are offering the value which should be. So they in actual life, in real life, they're not comparing it with all those stuff. But when the assessing officer if picks up your case, he would take out all these values and he will calculate the gross annual value accordingly. So one has to be very, very careful. And why this expected rent concept was introduced, I told you that फिर तो कोई भी actual rent दिखा दे कम ज़्यादा, and say that this is the gross annual value, which is not right. Okay, now किसी को, I hope everyone has on the same page, right? चलो, now let's proceed आगे. I have put a star here and I'll be back. Just remind me. Next is the deduction of municipal taxes. Now, what is municipal taxes? Municipal taxes means house property tax in common, which we understand, or any property tax which you're paying for annually. I'm not talking about cash property ली उस पे registration charges जो दिए नहीं, जो एक annual liability आती है to pay on the property, that is called municipal taxes का deduction. Now, municipal taxes are allowed on paid basis, and paid basis मतलब paid by the owner. If I am the owner who is paying municipal taxes, whatever municipal taxes has been paid during the year would be allowed as deduction. Now you will be like, what, ma'am, during the year मैंने पुराने taxes पुराने साल के भी दिए, then also it would be allowed? Yes, then also it would be allowed. Whatever taxes have been paid during the year would be allowed as deduction. Now, it can be 2 years back, it can be 3 years back. सारे taxes जो मैंने इस साल pay करा in relation to that property would be allowed as deduction. इस साल कुछ pay नहीं किया would not be allowed as deduction. Tenant में pay कर दिया, then also would not be allowed as deduction until unless I'm reimbursing it. Finally, वो owner के pocket से जाना चाहिए, तभी it is allowed as deduction. Otherwise, it is not allowed as deduction. Clear? So paid during the year. अब वो जोन से मर्जी साल को belong करे, but वो उस property को belong करना चाहिए, that would be allowed as deduction. And then we will come to the concept of net annual value. यहाँ तक किसी को कोई doubt? Ritik, advance payment of tax in relation to what? As in municipal taxes? Yes. Kushi, I think I have given this a pretty clarity that land is not a house property. A vacant land is not a house property. That comes to net annual value. Now, before we proceed to our deductions, which are very, very, very interesting, one thing, my friends, you have to understand the concept of unrealized rent before we go to the concept of deductions. Now, unrealized rent is a common phenomenon when it comes to LOP. Now, what is unrealized rent? Now, when I told you about actual rent, I meant here actual rent received or receivable during the year. Received or receivable during the year. Receivable मतलब अब जैसे maybe one of my tenant is facing some personal issues. He said that ma'am मैं इस महीने का criteria इस महीने का rent I would pay in the next month, or maybe his salary did not get credit on time, whatever can be situation, right? But rent तो due है ना to be received and he will pay me, correct? So that does not mean कि मैं उसे actual rent में ना लूँ. Actual rent में वो मैं full 12 months के rent में उसको I will take. Why? Because it is received or receivable. The term says both. Just because there is a delay in payment, maybe वो एक महीने बाद दे या 2 महीने बाद दे, but the idea is that he will give it. But sometimes the rent goes unrealized. Unrealized rent का क्या मतलब है? That now bad debt सुना है आपने? You must have heard about bad debt. Bad debt क्या होता है? When a debt is not recoverable, when the debtor or my revenue source is now not recoverable, he has gone bad. He will not pay me the money. He may have absconded, or he may have done any fraud and ran away. We don't know. Okay. So bad debt, वैसे ही अगर unrealized rent क्या है? When the rent goes bad. मतलब now bad debt rent हो गया. Now I cannot recover that amount ever, or at least in the near future. That is unrealized rent. So unrealized rent, my friend, is basically when there was a property which was let out to a tenant. Then the let out property may the tenant defaulted in some payments of the property. Then I asked him to give me the rent. He did not give the rent and he vacated the property and left. मैंने पुलिस में भी कंप्लेन किया, मैंने लीगल रूट भी लिया to recover the rent, but I was not successful. That is unrealized. Delay in payment या rent थोड़े टाइम बाद मिलेगा is not unrealized rent. Unrealized rent is I have done all my legal options which were available to recover it, and prima facie for the time being it seems not recoverable. That is unrealized rent. Okay. So receivable or unrealized में फर्क होना, clarity होना is extremely important. So unrealized rent would be a rent for that tenancy period where the tenant was living, but he vacated the property, he defaulted in the payment. I did give him notices, I did file a police complaint. मैंने यानी अपनी तरीके से सारा कोशिश कर लिया, but since the rent is unrealized, is unrecoverable, it becomes unrealized rent. So unrealized rent का ना two possible treatments है. One treatment which is given in the Income Tax Act is that you reduce it from actual rent. एक्चुअल रेंट में से अनरियलाइज रेंट को रिड्यूस करो, तब एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट से कंपेयर करो. नाउ यू विल से कि मैम फिर तो उस केस में हमेशा एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट हायर आएगा, बिकॉज एक्चुअल रेंट में अमाउंट और कम हो गया, एंड एक्चुअल रेंट और एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट विच एवर इज हायर को लेना होता है, and expected rent would be higher. Yes, typically you are right, expected rent unnecessarily higher ho jayega and you have to pay taxes on that. But this is what the law says, that the unrealized rent should be reduced from the actual rent. But when I come to the income tax return form, I see the unrealized rent is reduced from gross annual value. The unrealized rent is reduced from the gross annual value. यानी पहले actual rent received और receivable और एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट को कंपेयर करा, इसमें से विच एवर इज हायर आया वो मेरा ग्रॉस एनुअल वैल्यू हो गया, उसमें से अनरियलाइज्ड रेंट को रिड्यूस किया, उसमें से अनरियलाइज्ड रेंट को रिड्यूस किया, एंड देन म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस को रिड्यूस किया. So whichever way you follow would be right in your exams. There would be no marks reduction. Preference would be given to both the way of calculation equally. Obviously the difference might come because हो सकता है कि आपका actual first method से actual rent becomes lower and your expected rent is becoming your gross annual value, and then उस पे you are reducing the municipal tax. इसमें हो सकता है कि actual rent is becoming my gross annual value and then I am reducing it from the unrealized, then I am reducing the unrealized rent from it. So both the situations would be right. Okay, so unrealized rent वाला concept में किसी को doubt? अभी तक हम सिर्फ ग्रॉस एनुअल वैल्यू को कैलकुलेट किया, उससे हम नेट एनुअल वैल्यू पे कैसे आए, वी हैव सीन दैट. So Krishna, GAV is calculated based on two comparisons: rent that should be, which is called expected rent, or actual rent received or receivable during the year. ठीक है ना. रेंट दैट शुड बी कैसे निकालेंगे? रेंट दैट शुड बी यानी एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट इज कैलकुलेटेड बेस्ड ऑन थ्री वैल्यूज: fair market value, municipal value, and standard rate. पहले यू विल कंपेयर योर fair market value and municipal value, उसमें से whichever is higher, you will compare it with the standard rent. उसमें से whichever is lower would become your expected rent. Expected rent आ गया, उसमें से you will compare it with your actual rent. That would become your gross annual value, whichever is the higher amount. Guys, again I will say step by step चलोगे, आंसर गलत नहीं आएगा. सीधा expected rent को gross annual value मत बना देना. You have to compare it with the actual rent always. Clear? चलिए आगे. चलो ग्रेट. विशाली, अभी वेकेंसी पे हम नहीं है. वी आर सेइंग पिकिंग अप अ सिचुएशन टू अंडरस्टैंड income from house property from the perspective of a let out property which is let out during the year. ठीक है. चलो great. Now make sure that you're making a comparison for 12 months for everything. Okay. So tell me what is the gross annual value? Sorry. What is the gross? एक second, this is not working. 1 minute. Sorry. What is the gross annual value in this situation where you have been given that fair rent is 60,000, municipal value is 70,000, gross annual value यानी पूरे साल का वैल्यू होगा वो. ओके. एक्चुअल और ये these are all per month figure. ओके. Standard rent is 55,000. Actual rent is 65,000. What is the gross annual value, guys? $7,80,000. Now, another information which is given to you is municipal taxes due is 25,000. Paid during the year by the owner is 30,000. He paid municipal taxes of previous year also. Previous year matlab preceding years. So what would be the reduction allowed here? 30,000. So my net annual value comes to 7,50,000. यहाँ तक किसी को कोई डाउट? यहाँ तक हम सबको क्लियर है, राइट? नेक्स्ट स्टूडेंट, आई टोल्ड यू इसमें सिर्फ 2 डिडक्शंस मिलती है टू कंप्यूट द हाउस प्रॉपर्टी इनकम. वन इज स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन. विथ स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन यहाँ पे जैसे house salaries we saw there is a standard deduction of 50,000 flat. Letter property में standard deduction is flat at the rate 30% of net annual value. Whatever is the net annual value, uska flat 30% would be allowed as deduction, which is 2,25,000. This 30% is the deduction given assuming a house property may there can be repairs which can be going by the owner. There can be small construction, not construction as in full construction, but a small construction which is going on. There can be maintenances which are being paid. There can be some depreciation which is there. There can be insurance which you're paying for the property. No expenses are allowed, but a standard deduction in form of those expenses is allowed in sum. As in, अब वो actual expenditure हो रहा है, नहीं हो रहा, compare ज़्यादा हो रहा है, कम हो रहा है, nothing. 30% flat मिलेगा, इससे ज़्यादा नहीं मिलेगा. Flat 30% would be allowed as deduction. Second, 24B में 24 clause B में जो deduction मिलता है, that is on interest. Interest of what? Interest on loan taken for that property. Now, since you are the owner of the property, you might have taken the loan for the property to purchase it or to construct it, right? So the loan is allowed as deduction. Loan, my friend, whatever the loan is getting accrued during the year. I have paid it or not does not matter, but that rent, that interest which is accrued during the year would be allowed as deduction. Accrued during the year would be allowed as deduction. Ma'am, loan किसके लिए लेना है? Loan property के लिए लेना है. जिस property के लिए loan ले रहे हो, उसी property का interest minus होगा. Okay? Loan पे मैम मैंने इंटरेस्ट नहीं अभी ईएमआई पे डिफॉल्ट हो गया नहीं अप्रूव्ड इंटरेस्ट वुड बी अलाउड इंटरेस्ट सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाता है जनरली ऑन द लोन्स फ्रॉम द इंस्टीट्यूशंस बीट बैंक एनबीएफसी फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन सबसे आपको इंटरेस्ट सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाता है ड्यूरिंग द ईयर बेस्ड ऑन दैट यू कैन claim this deduction. So interest accrued during the year is allowed as deduction. Is it clear? अब एक और कॉन्सेप्ट आता है यहाँ पे यू विल आस्क मैम लोन मैंने फ्रेंड से लिया बट प्रॉपर्टी के लिए लिया वुड बी अलाउड एज डिडक्शन यस मैम लोन घर खरीदने के लिए नहीं लिया लोन रिपेयर कराने के लिए लिया तब भी इट वुड बी अलाउड एज डिडक्शन यस कंस्ट्रक्शन एक्विजिशन और रिपेयर बट द लोन शुड बी फॉर दैट प्रॉपर्टी बट द लोन शुड बी फॉर दैट प्रॉपर्टी इज व्हाट इज द क्राइटेरिया. Okay, so interest accrued during the year on the loan which is taken for that property. कोई doubt? Loan friend से allowed है, loan family member से allowed है, loan financial institutions बैंक सबसे allowed है. Plus एक concept आता है pre-construction period interest. Now what is this concept, ma'am? I will tell you, but before that, if you have any doubt in any of the points which we have discussed till now, please let me know. Pakka? Good. Now, what is pre-construction period interest? Guys, first thing हमने क्या बोला था प्रॉपर्टी होगी तो ही इनकम इसमें आएगा प्रॉपर्टी होना बहुत जरूरी है करेक्ट एंड प्रॉपर्टी कब होता है प्रॉपर्टी इज व्हेन यू हैव लीगल टाइटल एज एन एक्वायर्ड इट या द प्रॉपर्टी का कंस्ट्रक्शन इज कंप्लीटेड देन ओनली प्रॉपर्टी कम्स इनटू पिक्चर. अब मैं अनकंस्ट्रक्टेड प्रॉपर्टी या सेमी कंस्ट्रक्टेड प्रॉपर्टी या भी ड्यूरिंग द कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ द प्रॉपर्टी को इनकम फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी नहीं दिखा सकती बाय because there is no house property which is ready. So for the income for the house property, a house property should be in picture for us. Now you will ask, ma'am, वो कैसे पता चलेगा? Once a constructed property is completed, उसका construction certificate issue होता है. उसका construction certificate issue होता है that now the property is fit for use. So that construction certificate is a signal that the property is now completed. But when we talk about constructed property, the loan should have been taken many years back. Construction के लिए, I'm not talking about acquired property. I'm talking about the property which was constructed. अब उसके लिए आपने लोन बहुत साल पहले ले हो सकता है, बट प्रॉपर्टी पिक्चर में कब आएगी? ओनली व्हेन द कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट इज देयर. अब इंटरेस्ट वुड हैव बीन पेड फ्रॉम द डेट व्हेन द लोन इज टेकन टू द डेट व्हेन द to the date when the construction is being happening, correct? Or to the date till the time construction has been completed. तो उस पीरियड के इंटरेस्ट को क्या करेंगे? Let's understand. One second. What we will do for that period is what we have to understand. Now, Mr. A, please focus, guys. Mr. A took a loan for constructing the property in May 2020. But now COVID came, उन्होंने expect किया था एक साल में खत्म हो जाएगा. But the property construction was completed only in, or say, June 2022. Now you will say कि मैम pre-construction period हो गया May 2020 से लेके June 2022 तक. Correct? You will say like this, but I will say this is wrong. Property कब complete हो गई? June में. So in the previous year 22-23, ध्यान से guys, please focus here. In the previous year 22-23, there is a house property. June 2022 में construct हो गई. तो previous year 22-23 के लिए there is a property. अब वो चाहे June 22 में cover हो या February 23 में या March 23 में, does not matter. Previous year के लिए property create हो गई. Yes. Guys, yes or no? Yes. अब इस केस में हाँ एक्चुअल रेंट आप और एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट उसी पीरियड से लोगे फ्रॉम द टाइम व्हेन द प्रॉपर्टी इज कंप्लीटेड, बट देयर इज अ प्रॉपर्टी व्हिच इज देयर. अब whatever interest which you are paying from 1st April to June 22 or even after, that is for the entire previous year 22-23, whatever interest is getting accrued, you would have claimed under this segment, interest accrued during the year, right? So the pre-construction period, my friend, is not June 2022. It's from May 2020 to 31st of March 2022. Reason being, from this period, as in from 1st April 2022 to June and even thereafter, which is till 31st March 2023, whatever interest is getting accrued during the year is getting computed in this segment, which is interest accrued during the year. Why? Because now the property is alive for the previous year 22-23. The property is there for the previous year 22-23. So जो भी interest accrued during the year है वो मैं claim कर सकती हूँ, because सबसे पहले मैंने आपको ये criteria बताया था that the interest which is accrued during the year is claimed as deduction under 24B. कहाँ तक claim कर सकती हूँ? As in 1st April से लेके 31st March तक. तो प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट जो क्लेम नहीं हुआ is which period? Is from May 2022 to 31st March 2022. So can I say pre-construction period is the period, now I will repeat myself, from the date when the loan is taken till the 31st March of the immediately preceding year in which the construction was completed. Or till the 31st March immediately preceding to the year in which the construction was completed. ये कह सकती हो. अब आप ये सबको क्लियर होगा कि मई 2022 से जून मई 2020 से लेके जून 2022 का इंटरेस्ट प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन क्यों नहीं है, वो सबको क्लियर हुआ. मई 20 से 31 मार्च 2022 का ही इंटरेस्ट इज अ प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट. सबको क्लियर है गाइस व्हाई 31st March and why not June 2022? तभी I will proceed आगे. Pre-construction period clear? Very good. Now, अब ध्यान से guys. So for the year, अब you have to tell me what is the pre-construction period, which is May 2022 से 31st March 2022. May 2020 से लेके 31st March 2022. What is the pre-construction interest? Interest paid between 1st April to June 2022 is 15,000. From June, or I can say 1st July to March, interest paid is say 40,000. Interest paid from May 2020 से लेके 31st March 2021 is 60,000. From 31st March 2021 से लेके 31st March 2022 तक interest paid is 50,000, or paid and accrued and paid both. What is the interest for pre-construction period? Interest for pre-construction period. Is it 110? Is it 125? What, or is it 60, or is it 50 only? What is the interest for pre-construction period, my friends? So those who said 110, Dinesh, Diksha, Kavita, Ritik, you guys are absolutely correct. Pre-construction period ka interest is 110. Why it is 55, guys? Why 50 or 65? सबसे पहले, guys, it is very important to identify what is pre-construction period. Construction started on May 2020, and the certificate was issued in June 2020. But my friends, for the previous year 20, pre-construction, I told, उससे पहले, इसको भी जाने से पहले, just remember that for the income for the purpose of house property, there should be a house property, right? अगर house property नहीं है, चाहे या वो house property नहीं है, तो वो उस पे कोई इनकम नहीं आएगी, एंड ऑब्वियसली कोई बेनिफिट भी नहीं मिलेगा इंटरेस्ट का, स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन का. बट हाउस प्रॉपर्टी कब होती है? व्हेन अ कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट इज इशूड फॉर इट, स्पेशली व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट अ प्रॉपर्टी व्हिच वाज इन कंस्ट्रक्शन. उससे पहले वो अंडर कंस्ट्रक्टेड प्रॉपर्टी को हम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी नहीं बोलते, इट्स अ हाफ कुक प्रॉपर्टी, राइट? तो उसको हम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी नहीं बोलेंगे. इवन इफ अ ढांचा इज रेडी, इवन इफ there is some work pending, but it is not fit to use, right? तो उसको हाउस प्रॉपर्टी नहीं बोलेंगे. जून 2022 में कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट मिला, तो हाउस प्रॉपर्टी कौन सी ईयर में एक्टिव हुई? प्रीवियस ईयर 22-23. ठीक है, हाउस प्रॉपर्टी कौन सी ईयर में आई? प्रीवियस ईयर 22-23 में. उससे पहले वाले साल में there was no property. Why? Because completion certificate was not given. अब previous year 22-23 में whatever interest is getting accrued, I can claim it because यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है interest accrued during the year. Even if my property got completed in March 23, then also previous year 22-23 के लिए there is a property and I can claim interest accrued during the year. Yes. So whatever interest is getting accrued from 1st of April to 31st of March can be claimed under interest accrued during the year. So pre-construction period, my friend, is not from the date when the loan was taken till the date completion certificate is given. Pre-construction period for the purpose of Act is from the date when the loan was taken till the date of 31st March, immediately preceding to the year in which the house was completed. Okay. Now, house got completed in June 2022, but June 2022 में complete हो रहा है, but अब previous year 22-23 के लिए property है, तो whatever interest is getting accrued during the year, I can simply claim. क्लेम क्या नहीं कर सकती थी? जो उससे पहले इंटरेस्ट है, जो 31st उसके पहले वाले प्रीवियस ईयर्स का इंटरेस्ट है या उससे पहले वाले प्रीसीडिंग ईयर्स का इंटरेस्ट है, वो क्लेम नहीं कर सकती बिकॉज द क्राइटेरिया वाज इंटरेस्ट अक्रूड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर, राइट? तो अब जो प्रीसीडिंग ईयर्स का इंटरेस्ट है वो वेस्ट जाएगा नहीं, उसके लिए टर्मिनोलॉजी इनकम टैक्स ने इंट्रोड्यूस करा that interest for pre-construction period. But to calculate the interest for pre-construction period, you have to calculate what is pre-construction period. Pre-construction period, my friend, is from the date of loan till 31st March 2022 in this particular case. Why? Because June में जब property complete हुआ, पूरी previous year के लिए I have a property to claim. So previous year 22-23 में पूरे साल there is a property, even if it got completed by even at the end of the year, but अब वो property books में आ गया, I can claim interest during the year. Interest का loss, interest जो नहीं claim कर सकती loan के लेके 31st March 2022 तक, वो मेरा pre-construction period interest हो जाता है. So in this case it would be 110 and not 125, because this, which is my $55,000, वैसे तो लॉजिकली ये ज्यादा होना चाहिए, but no problem. With this is 55,000 would go as interest accrued during the year पूरा, and this 110 would go under pre-construction period. But pre-construction period interest अगर एक साथ अलाउ करोगे तो हमेशा लॉस आएगा, हमेशा लॉस आएगा या एक सब्सटैंशियल इनकम लेस हो जाएगी, राइट? Pre-construction could be for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or even for 4-5 years, right? So गवर्नमेंट ने क्या कहा कि प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट निकाल लो, अब ये 110 रहेगा, राइट, फॉर ऑल द इयर्स. अब अगले साल के लिए प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड आप कहोगे नहीं है, बट 110 है, प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट तो है ही 110, नो मैटर व्हाट एवर फैक्ट इज, फ्रॉम द ईयर ऑफ द लोन, फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ द लोन till 31st March immediately preceding the year in which the construction was completed, वो प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड है, उसमें whatever interest got accrued is my प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड इंटरेस्ट. तो गवर्नमेंट के सेज कि एक साथ सारा क्लेम मत करो, उसको 5 इंस्टॉलमेंट्स में क्लेम करो every year starting from the year in which the construction was completed. So I will claim 22,000 in the previous year, which is 1/5, previous year 22-23. Then remaining 4 installments would be claimed in previous year 23-24, 24-25, 25-26, 26 and 27. हर साल 22,000 I will claim along with the interest which is getting accrued in these respective years. Along with the interest which is getting accrued in the respective years. So can I say interest on loan ka deduction or interest on loan taken for the house property ka deduction is allowed under section 24B. It is interest accrued during the year प्लस प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट का इंस्टॉलमेंट. That installment को calculate करने के लिए you have to identify first what is pre-construction period. Then you have to calculate the interest which has accrued in those pre-construction period in total. Then you have to calculate 1/5 of it. And then 1/5 of it would be started to be allowed from the year when the construction was completed and the next 4 years. Every year I will claim the deduction of pre-construction period interest for the 5 years plus deduction which would be claimed along with the interest which is getting accrued during the year. So 20 to 23 में total interest का deduction हो गया 77,000. Got it? एक बारी देखो and let me know what is the doubt. Kushi, I think I have answered all your questions. Where is still the doubt you have to tell? I think all your questions were answered and I don't know who is new and who is old. So please don't bring in unnecessary confusions. If there is still a doubt, tell me ki where is the doubt, okay? And I'll be very happy to take. Guys, pre-construction interest का concept, तो total interest क्या claim करेंगे हम? One which is accruing during the year plus the pre-construction period का interest का 1/5 part. And it would be claimed only on the first 5 years, beginning from the year in which the construction was completed. The reason is simple कि property आएगा ही live, as in वो property identify तब होगा जब construction complete हुआ, when the construction was completed. ठीक है? अब यू विल से कि मैम मैंने प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट नहीं क्लेम किया इन द ईयर ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्शन, तो 5 इंस्टॉलमेंट्स बाद में यूज हो सकता है? नहीं, it has to start from the year of construction from the year of construction itself. You cannot say that next 5 years अब शुरू कर लेते हैं, नहीं, वो फिर जितने साल बचे हैं खाली उसी का अलाउ होगा. If the property is completed at the end of the year 2023, then still the interest for the year will be claimed for that whole year. Correct, Diksha. Interest would be claimed for that whole year because simple criteria is interest accrued during the year. $30,000 ग्रॉस एनुअल वैल्यू में से इसलिए रिड्यूस किया क्योंकि वो म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस थे which were paid during the year. No, Rama, you cannot claim the entire amount in the 5th year. 5 installments मिलेंगी starting from the year in which the construction was completed. There is no other option saying कि मैम हमने नहीं claim किया तो अब सारा एक साथ दे दो, नहीं. Rather, this would be a question which can come in your exams. कि it can come as a question of theory, it can come as a question of MCQ, it can come as a full-fledged question. If a person did not claim the interest, so can he claim it altogether? You can say no, because it's strictly given that assessee will be allowed a deduction on account of pre-interest, which is 1/5 of the accumulated interest for the pre-construction period from the year in which the construction is completed. Abhi, we cannot get the reduction in the for the principal payment under the head income from house property. Principal payment ka interest goes under deductions from gross total income, which is 80C, which you will see. Kushi, please see here. House property got completed in June 2022. So the property is there for the previous year 22-23, right? So whatever interest is getting accrued during the year, be it just before the construction certificate, still it can be claimed as interest accrued during the year. So 15,000 जो 1st April से लेके 1st April से लेके 30th June 2022 तक हुआ, that can also be claimed as interest accrued during the year, because the criteria यहाँ पे is that there should be a property. Once a property is there, whatever interest is getting accrued during the year, you can claim it here. Now the question comes, what is the pre-construction period? Pre-construction period is a period which starts from the year in which the loan is taken and goes till 31st March of the year, immediately preceding to the year in which the construction was completed. Okay, so जो उसका 31st March पड़ रहा होगा just before the year of construction completion, that would be considered as pre-construction period. And accumulated interest has to be taken. Accumulated interest मतलब सारे साल का from the loan date to 31st March of the year in which the construction, to 31st March of the year preceding the year in which the construction was completed. So accumulated interest कितना हो जाएगा pre-construction period का 60 plus 50 110. बट सारा का सारा प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड एक साथ ईयर ऑफ कंप्लीशन में अलाउ नहीं होगा. इट वुड बी अलाउड इन 5 installments beginning from the year in which the construction was completed or acquisition was done. It starts from this previous year 22-23. बाकी 4 22,000 I will claim it in the year which are successive, that is previous year 23-24, 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27. Is it clear? Along with the interest which would be getting accrued in these respective years. Now, I will drop you all for the break, but before going to the break, I want you to do the question during the break, take the refreshment time, uske baad, just tell me what would be the interest allowed as deduction under section 24 clause B, and the things which are given to you are as follows. Construction got completed on January 2023. Loan was taken in July 2019. The interests are given to you as under, okay? April 2022 से January 23 का interest is 33,000. Going forward it is 12,000. ठीक है, total is 40. Now you have to tell me what is the total 24B ka deduction, and we'll be back after the break and we'll discuss who got it right. Sir, it is the break. Please apply it. So welcome back, guys. So let's see what is the deduction given as per 24B for previous year 22-23. Let's quickly solve. First of all, it would be complete interest accrued during the year, which would be 45,000. Okay, plus 1/5 of pre-construction period interest. Pre-construction period में क्या क्या आएगा? 40 plus 50 plus 47. अगर किसी ने इसके अलावा कुछ और लिया guys, then you are doing wrong. 40 plus 50 plus 47 divided by 5 to 27.4 plus 45. So my total interest accrued during the year plus pre-construction period का installment, total interest allowed under section 24 clause B would be 72,400. Total interest allowed is 72,400. अब अगर previous year 23-24 में interest is say 40,000, तो 40,000 जो previous year 23-24 का interest है plus 1/5 installment which is coming, which is 27,400. तो next year का भी हो जाएगा वो 67,400 interest. Got it? Now let's see who was the right one to answer and the first one to answer. Question, Manisha, आपने सही किया 27,400, but the question has asked that what is the interest under section 24B. In standard deduction comes under section 24 clause A. This interest deduction comes under section 24 clause B. दो deductions allowed होती हैं under section 24. One is clause A, standard deduction. Clause B, interest deduction, interest total which is accrued plus pre-construction. Correct, Ritik? So Rama, see, registration document date is proper, but वो municipality देती है आपको completion certificate. अमित, खुशी, अब समझ आ गया कहाँ गलती हुई है. 130, राजीव 137 का डिवाइड बाय 5 भी करने गए. वैशाली, इज इट क्लियर? रामा, जैसे भी आपको कंस्ट्रक्शन सर्टिफिकेट मिल रहा है उसी बेसिस पे कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट अगर वो सिंगल प्रॉपर्टी का मिल रहा है तो वो दे देंगे. वो तभी देंगे अगर बाकी अपार्टमेंट के फ्लोर्स की वजह से कुछ यूसेज प्रॉब्लम ना आए फॉर वन ऑफ द अपार्टमेंट. करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट 1 अप्रैल से 12 से लेके जनवरी 23 का गाइस वाज 33. यहाँ पे क्लियरली लिखा हुआ है. सो दृश्य, आई होप इट इज क्लियर. सुशील, अब समझ आया कहाँ गलती हुई. 72,400 गाइस, 67,400 कैसे आया? दीक्षा had answered correctly. भूमिका, Dinesh, very good. He Champ has written everything correctly. Very good. Vishali also got it right. Good. ठीक है, तो गाइस प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड बहुत जरूरी है समझना. People make mistake in this, so do not make mistake. Please, this is extremely important. चले आगे. So now that's how in this case, the example which we were taking, the income from house property comes, and that, my friend, is gross annual value 780 आया था. I'll repeat it again. ग्रॉस एनुअल वैल्यू 780 आया था. कैसे आया था? फेयर रेंट 60 था, मार्केट वैल्यू, रिसिपेंट वैल्यू 70 था, स्टैंडर्ड रेंट 55 था. इसमें से एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट केम टू 55, compared with the actual rent, higher was actual rent, 65 into 12, 780. Municipal taxes due were 25, but he paid some dues of the preceding year also during the year, so 30,000 was allowed as deduction. Net annual value 7,50,000 आया, इस पे 30% standard deduction मिलेगा, which comes to 2,25,000. Okay. Now interest total accrued during the year plus 1/5 installment of pre-construction period, total interest come to 77,000. So my income from house property is 7,50,000 minus 30% of standard deduction under section 24 clause A minus 77,000, which comes to 448. So the total income from letter property is 448. Got it? Now, मेरे पास 4 लेटर प्रॉपर्टी से चारों लेट आउट है, तो हर एक लेटर प्रॉपर्टी का इनकम अलग कंप्यूट होगा. सबको कंबाइन करके नहीं करोगे. यू विल राइट इनकम फ्रॉम प्रॉपर्टी 1, इनकम फ्रॉम प्रॉपर्टी 2, और उसमें सब में ऐसे ही ग्रॉस एनुअल वैल्यू निकलेगा, स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन निकलेगा, इंटरेस्ट ऑन लोन निकलेगा. जो जिस प्रॉपर्टी का इंटरेस्ट है उसी से डिड्यूस होगा, जो जिस प्रॉपर्टी का म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस है उसी से डिड्यूस होगा. आई टोल्ड यू that if you have 4 properties, you have to compute it for all properties separately: property 1, property 2, property 3, in the exact form of GAV, NAV, standard deduction, and your interest on loan. Whatever belongs to that particular property would be allowed as deduction. ऐसा नहीं होगा that interest on loan I can claim it from all 4 properties equally. There is no such concept. Stay to the property and compute its value in entirety. So LOP का concept clear? Yes, Kavita, your answer is also right. Sushil, next year I gave an example कि अगर next year say 40,000 interest है, तो 40 plus 27 400, 23 previous year 23 24 में दोनों total 67 400 का interest allow होगा. So can I now move to my second type of property, which is self-occupied property? Now, friends, self-occupied property is a property which is occupied for self-use, self-occupied property, or if it is not occupied for self-use, and the reason for non-occupancy is because of the employment or business in some other place, which I told you. And उस वजह से you are unable to occupy it, right? So self-occupied property may, first of all, how do you compute the income from self-occupied property? Simply, first you have to compute the GAV. इसमें भी सब same चलता है, but I'll tell you what is the catch. Less municipal taxes, you come to NAV, less deduction. One is standard deduction, of 30%, and another is interest. Guys, this is what. And then you come to your income from house property. Correct. Now, gross annual value, my friends, in case of self-occupied property, is to be considered as nil. But only up to 2 properties का concept है that I will tell is considered as nil. क्योंकि nil है तो municipal taxes का भी deduction is not allowed when we talk about self-occupied property. NAV is also nil. Standard deduction of nil का standard deduction क्या है मिलेगा? So standard deduction is also not there. Only friends interest deduction is there, and that too exactly same as accrued plus pre-construction. Accrued during the year plus pre-construction period interest. Accrued during the year plus pre-construction period interest ही मिलता है. Then you come to your loss from house property. Why there would be a loss? Because सब कुछ 0 0 है और अगर उसमें से interest का deduction मिल रहा है, so there would be naturally loss or there would be nil income if no loan is going on. So SOP में दो ही रिजल्ट आएंगे, या तो लॉस फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी आएगा या nil income का आंसर आएगा. और अगर किसी का SOP में पॉजिटिव आ रहा है, दैट मीन्स दैट देयर इज कुछ गड़बड़. So gross annual value for self-occupied property is considered to be nil. There is no deduction for municipal taxes because nil में से zero में से negative NAV नहीं result करेगा. Standard deduction naturally would not come. Only loss which can be there could be from the interest from borrowed capital, and interest similarly has to be calculated for accrued plus pre-construction period. But यहाँ पे my friend there is one problem. अब SOP है, ऑलरेडी कुछ इनकम नहीं है, सो और आप जनरली लोन चल रहा है, राइट? लोन चल रहा है, SOP है, सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी है, देयर इज नो इनकम व्हिच द गवर्नमेंट इज गेटिंग बेनिफिट फ्रॉम. अब अगर इस पे इंटरेस्ट अलाउ कर देंगे सारा का सारा, तो नेचुरली लॉस बहुत ज्यादा आएगा, एंड कोई भी लॉस बाकी इनकम से सेट ऑफ हो सकता है. यू विल कम टू नो दैट कॉन्सेप्ट. सो गवर्नमेंट सेड आप अक्रूड इंटरेस्ट निकाल लो और प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड इंटरेस्ट निकाल लो, जो इससे आप अभी तक करते आए. बट टोटल इंटरेस्ट मैक्सिमम विच वुड बी अलाउड फ्रॉम अ सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी वुड बी 2 lakhs. And this ceiling, so there is a ceiling limit of 2 lakh. अब जैसे अक्रूड प्लस प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड अभी तक हमारा, जैसे हमने देखा इक्वेशन में 72,400 आ रहा था, राइट? सो दैट टोटल वुड बी अलाउड. बट सपोज अक्रूड प्लस प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड इज say 2,70,000. So only interest which would be allowed would be 2 lakhs. So the loss from house property maximum would be 2 lakhs in case of self-occupied property. This 2 lakh का ceiling limit is not there in let out property because you are offering an income there. तो वहां से interest आप जितना मर्जी claim करो. अब interest claim करने की वजह से loss भी आ सकता है. That is not an issue in a let out property. But for a self-occupied property, the maximum interest which is allowed along with pre-construction period interest during the year is 2 lakhs, and that too also when the loan is taken. यहाँ पे conditions हैं. It's a condition thing, and the conditions, my friend, are when the loan is taken for the purpose of construction or acquisition. Number one, loan is taken after 1st April 1999, which in your case most likely be, and the construction is completed in 5 years from the end of the financial year in which the loan was taken. अगर ये conditions पूरी हो रही है तभी 2 lakh का limit होगा. If these conditions are not fulfilled, then the limit of interest or the ceiling of interest is 30,000. So can I say when the loan is taken for repairs, the maximum interest allowed on self-occupied property would be 30,000. If the loan is taken before 1st April 1999, the maximum interest allowed would be 30,000. If the loan was taken for construction, but the construction got completed in 8 years, the maximum interest allowed would be 30,000. Any of this condition is not fulfilled, then the ceiling limit of 2 lakhs is reduced to 30,000, and the maximum loss from house property can be 30,000. नाउ एक यहाँ पे कंडीशन है कि आई टोल्ड यू द मैक्सिमम हाउस विच यू कैन क्लेम एज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड इज 2, यानी द ग्रॉस एनुअल वैल्यू ऑफ सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी कैन बी टेकन एज नील ओनली फॉर 2 हाउसेज मैक्स। मतलब मेरे पास 2 घर हैं, दोनों मेरे सेल्फ यूसेज के लिए, तो दोनों का वैल्यू नील आ सकता है एंड उस दोनों का इंटरेस्ट वुड बी अलाउड, दैट इज ट्रू। बट द मोमेंट the third house also come and that is also self occupied, then what will we do? So on one of the house we will check the provisions and we will apply the provisions of deemed letter property. How would this one of the house be calculated? We will see in next 10 minutes. But coming back to this, that the limit, the maximum self-occupied property which you can claim as the gross annual value of nil is 2. Now this 2 lakh and 30,000 concept is also clear. The 2 lakh is the ceiling limit of the interest which we compute on accrued plus pre-construction period. The maximum interest which would be allowed would be 2 lakh for the year. If the loan is taken for construction acquisition and the loan is taken after 1st April 1999 and the construction got completed within 5 years from the end of the year when from the end of the financial year in which the loan was taken. Okay. If any of the condition is not satisfied, the maximum interest allowed would be 30,000. बट ये जो लिमिट है ना, ये इन टोटो है। इन टोटो मतलब इन टोटल है फॉर बोथ द हाउसेस, मतलब दोनों हाउसेस का मिला के इंटरेस्ट आई कैन क्लेम, दोनों सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी का इंटरेस्ट मिला के आई कैन क्लेम 2 लाख, और दोनों सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी अगर उसमें इंटरेस्ट चल रहा है रिपेयर का तो मिला के 30,000, अलग अलग नहीं मैम। एग्जाम्पल, तो नाउ यहाँ पे एग्जाम्पल्स में हम कुछ क्राइटेरिया देखेंगे। सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी 1, सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी 2, लेट आउट प्रॉपर्टी 1 एंड लेट आउट प्रॉपर्टी 2। एक बंदे के पास 4 घर हैं, अ पर्सन हैज 4 हाउसेस and 2 of them is self-occupied, 2 of them are let out. Now, let out घर पे, let's calculate one by one. GAV, SOP की nil, let out property की suppose based on expected rent and actual rent everything compute करके it is coming to 10 lakhs and इसका 12 lakhs. Okay. लेस क्वेश्चन में आपको दिया हुआ है म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस पेड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर फॉर सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी इज 20,000 फॉर प्रॉपर्टी 1, कैन आई क्लेम इट? नो, आई कैन नॉट क्लेम इट। सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी 2 का म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस अलाउड इज से पेड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर इज 20,000, कैन आई क्लेम इट? नो। लेट आउट प्रॉपर्टी 1 का म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस पेड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर इज 10,000 अलाउड। LOP 2 का municipal taxes accrued during the year was 15,000 but nothing was paid, nothing would be allowed. ठीक है, so हर एक फंडा हम चेक कर रहे हैं guys। नेट एनुअल वैल्यू नील, इसमें नेट एनुअल वैल्यू 9,90,000, इसमें 12 लाख। Now there is a loan which is going on for property let out property 2 जिसमें interest accrued during the year is 35,000 and pre-construction period interest total is 6 lakhs. Okay, total 6 lakhs है, साल का 35,000 है और साल का थोड़ा सा और बढ़ा देते हैं 85,000 कर देते हैं। नाउ व्हाट वुड बी द LOP 2 का ट्रीटमेंट? सबसे पहले 30% स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन अलाउ हो जाएगा, which would be 3,60,000. Correct? और इंटरेस्ट कितना अलाउ होगा गाइस? इंटरेस्ट वुड बी 85,000 तो ड्यूरिंग द ईयर हो गया, बट 6 लाख का 1/5 which is 120 plus 85, 2,05,000 full interest would be allowed. So my income from house property would be 635. ये तो हमने अब बहुत बार कर लिया, यहाँ तक आई होप सबको क्लियर है, राइट? अभी हम एसओपी 2 और एसओपी 1 पे आएंगे. चले आगे. करेक्ट सुशील, कोई 30% रिडक्शन नहीं आएगा. वेरी गुड भूमिका. Now, for house property 1 which is let out, which is LOP 1, इस केस में फ्रेंड्स कुछ भी लोन नहीं चल रहा. The property is acquired from self funds. So what would be the case? Only standard deduction would be allowed, which is 990 पे 30%. $297. No deduction for interest because there is no loan which is going on. So 693 would be your income from house property let out, which is first. ये भी क्लियर हो गया? ओके. कृष्णा एलओपी 2 पे क्या अलाउड नहीं है? लिखो तो सही गाइस, क्वेश्चन पूरा लिखो प्लीज. वेरी गुड भूमिका, ये भी हो गया. कोमल, कौन सा इंटरेस्ट समझ नहीं आया गाइस? टोटल इंटरेस्ट अक्रूड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर वाज 85. प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट इज 6 lakhs. तो टोटल इंटरेस्ट अलाउड कितना होगा? 85 plus 1/5 of 6 lakhs. Simple, and assume that it's the first year of construction completion. आ गया? अब एसओपी 1 एंड एसओपी 2 पे चलते हैं. ना 24A में what यहाँ पे कोई भी स्टैंडर्ड रिडक्शन अलाउड नहीं होगा बिकॉज नील का 30% का क्या लोगे. ओके. नाउ एसओपी 1 में प्लीज यहाँ पे ध्यान से सुनना. देयर वाज अ लोन व्हिच वाज गोइंग ऑन फॉर रिपेयर्स जिसपे इंटरेस्ट पे करा 60,000. तो कितना इंटरेस्ट अलाउड होगा? आई टोल्ड यू, ध्यान से फोकस. For a self-occupied property, maximum interest which is allowed is 2 lakhs. But if the loan is taken for repairs, or if it is taken before 1st April 1999, or if the construction was not completed in the 5 years, the limit is reduced to 30,000. So यहाँ पे loan was taken for repair, जिस पे interest pay कर रहे हैं 60,000. तो कितना deduction allow होगा? 30,000. ठीक है. अब SOP 2 में total interest which was paid during the year is 1,50,000, including pre-construction का 1/5 installment. तो SOP 2 में कितना अलाउड हो जाएगा? 150. ये भी क्लियर होगा. सो यहाँ पे क्या होगा? यहाँ पे लॉस आएगा 30,000 का, और यहाँ पे भी लॉस आएगा 1,50,000 का. यहाँ तक किसी को कोई डाउट? कोमल, कृष्णा, guys, for doubt, you can make a note of it also if you have any doubt. I want everyone to answer with a yes or no. कृष्णा, मैं फैक्ट्स बोल रही थी, मैंने कहा था म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस अक्रूड हैं बट कुछ नहीं पे करा है लेट आउट प्रॉपर्टी टू में, तो अगर कुछ पे नहीं करा ड्यूरिंग द ईयर इट वुड नॉट बी अलाउड। सुशील, एसओपी 1 में 60,000 इंटरेस्ट ड्यूरिंग द ईयर है, बट देयर इज अ सीलिंग लिमिट ऑफ 30,000 व्हेन इट कम्स टू repair if the loan is taken for repair and not for construction, or if the loan is taken before 1st April 2000, 1st April 1999, the maximum interest which would be allowed would be 30,000, irrespective of whatever actual interest accrued during the year is, and plus pre-construction period interest is. The law specifies that this is a loss from house property. There is no income from house property. इनकम टैक्स में दीक्षा इनकम का मतलब इनकम भी होता है, लॉस भी होता है। इनकम लॉस इज इंक्लूडेड इन द वर्ड इनकम, so income can be a positive income also or a loss income also. Because Vishwanta, there was no let out property paid during the year. 1,50,000 मैंने आपको बताया कि there was an interest which is given to you, and ये 2 लाख या 30,000 का लिमिट में प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन प्लस योर इंटरेस्ट अक्रूड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर टोटल दोनों आएंगे। तो अब ये मेरे जो फ्रेंड है इनकी टोटल इनकम फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी कितना हो जाएगा? टोटल इनकम अंडर द हेड हाउस प्रॉपर्टी मतलब सम ऑफ ऑल हाउस प्रॉपर्टी, सो 693 plus 635 minus 30 minus 150. So the total income from house property due for the previous year 22-23 for this champ would be 11,48,000, जो फाइनल आउटर कॉलम में जाएगा, जो फाइनल ग्रॉस टोटल इनकम में ऐड होगा, which is sum of income from all properties owned by this person. इतना क्लियर हो गया? वेरी गुड। ठीक है, नाउ एसओपी की इंटरेस्ट का एक चेक पॉइंट है that these 2,30,000 आर इन टोटल। तो अभी ये एक बार अगर आपको किसी को कॉपी करना है तो और स्क्रीनशॉट लेना है, वॉट एवर यू वॉन्ट टू टेक, आई गिव यू अ मिनट प्लीज वेट। ठीक है, नाउ लेट्स प्रोसीड इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग वो टोटल वाला चीज कि मैम आप बार बार कह रहे हो कि टोटल लॉस अलाउड, टोटल लॉस अलाउड, तो इसका क्या मतलब है, इसका क्या रेलेवेंस है? अब एसओपी 1 है और एक एसओपी 2 है, ठीक है, दोनों कंस्ट्रक्शन के लिए दोनों का कंस्ट्रक्शन लोन चल रहा था। ठीक है, यहाँ पे टोटल इंटरेस्ट विच इज ड्यूरिंग द ईयर टोटल प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड का इंटरेस्ट 3 लाख, कितना हो जाएगा टोटल इंटरेस्ट? 3 लाख डिवाइड बाय 5, 60,000 ये एंड 110 टोटल 170. So आप कहोगे मैम टोटल 170 which is in the limit of 2 lakhs. So total interest allowed deduction under section 24 clause B would be 170. Right? This is what you will say. ओके एंड यहाँ पे कोई प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड नहीं है, ये लोन मैंने एक्विजिशन के लिए लिया था एंड एक्वायर भी हो गया टाइम से, कोई प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड है ही नहीं. तो यहाँ पे टोटल इंटरेस्ट मैम ये भी विद इन 2 लाख का लिमिट है, तो ये भी 75 अलाउ. करेक्ट. दिस इज व्हाट इज योर इमेज. इंटरेस्ट अक्रूड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर, यहाँ पे प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड इंटरेस्ट है ही नहीं. सो एसओपी 1 में आपने कहा कि मैम 2 लाख के अंदर आ रहा है 170 क्लेम करेंगे. एसओपी 2 में भी मैम 2 लाख के अंदर आ रहा है तो 75 क्लेम. बट फ्रेंड्स टोटल इंटरेस्ट विच इज अलाउड ना फ्रॉम बोथ प्रॉपर्टी कंबाइंड इज 2 lakhs. From both property combined is 2 lakhs, and similarly if it is rent then from both property combined is 30,000. Similarly the interest is on repair, sorry, then both property combined is 30,000, and similarly if it is from the construction or acquisition loan then both property combined is 2 lakh. So इस case में the maximum interest allowed would be 2 lakh. So how would you write it? You would write it as loss from house property or self-occupied property 1, 170. Loss from self-occupied property 2, 75. But the total loss allowed would be 2 lakh. Because 2 lakh is the maximum limit for the both self-occupied property to claim as interest deduction. Got it? अब एक सिनेरियो लेते हैं जहां पे एक लोन चल रहा है फॉर एक्विजिशन विच इज सेम 170, तो उसमें इंटरेस्ट आ गया 170 का. दूसरे प्रॉपर्टी पे इंटरेस्ट आ गया ऑफ रिपेयर्स और टोटल इंटरेस्ट है 40,000. तो आप बोलोगे कि मैम मैक्सिमम 30,000 अलाउड होगा. एक्चुअल इंटरेस्ट इज दूसरी प्रॉपर्टी पे इंटरेस्ट इज एक्चुअल 40,000. सो आप बोलोगे कि मैम सिर्फ 30,000 तक अलाउड होगा. करेक्ट. तो 170 प्लस 30 total loss from house properties which is self occupied is 2 lakh. So this is fine. But now let's take another example. एक है प्रॉपर SOP 1 जिसपे कंस्ट्रक्शन और प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन सब कुछ मिला के सारा इंटरेस्ट मिला के इंटरेस्ट एलिजिबल फॉर 24B is 2,40,000. So maximum interest which would be allowed is 2 lakh. Okay, which we agreed. दूसरा सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी है जिसपे रिपेयर पे लोन चल रहा है एंड उसका रिपेयर का इंटरेस्ट इज 17,000. तो 30,000 का लिमिट होता है तो आपने कहा 17,000 इज अलाउड. अब यहाँ पे फ्रेंड्स यू विल से कि मैम आपने कहा है कि 2 लाख एंड 30,000 विद अलाउड होता है, बट 30,000 कब अलाउ होता है? व्हेन द इंटरेस्ट इज फॉर रिपेयर or when the loan is taken for repair, when the loan was taken before 1st April 1999, or if the loan was taken for construction, it was not completed within 5 years, right? And 2 lakh is the limit if the loan is taken for acquisition, construction, and after 1st April 1999, provided the construction is completed within 4 years. तो इस केस में मैम कितना इंटरेस्ट अलाउ होगा? इस केस में भी मैक्सिमम, ये भी विद इन इट्स लिमिट है, ये भी विद इन इट्स लिमिट है, कंस्ट्रक्शन वाली, ये रिपेयर वाली, बट maximum interest in total would be allowed be 2 lakhs, would be 2 lakhs. सो पहले आप क्या करो, हर एक सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी यानी दोनों सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी में वट एवर इज द लिमिट यू अलाउ द इंटरेस्ट एज पर दैट. ओके, देन दोनों को कंबाइन करके फाइनल लॉस फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी वुड बी मैक्सिमम 2 lakhs. तो ये 3 सिनेरियोज हैं. फर्स्ट सिनेरियो आई रिपीट इट अगेन. फर्स्ट सिनेरियो में लॉस फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी 1 फॉर इंटरेस्ट ऑन कंस्ट्रक्शन was 170. Loss of house property 2 for interest on, say, acquisition. Interest on loan taken for acquisition is 75. Total interest still would be allowed would be 2 lakh. From then second question में loss on self-occupied property 1 for the loan taken for construction is 170. Loss from self-occupied property 2 for the loan taken for repair is 30. Still maximum interest which allowed would be 2 lakh. 170 इसका 30 उसका. थर्ड एग्जाम्पल में सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी 1 का इंटरेस्ट वाज 240, तो मैक्सिमम अलाउ हुआ 2 लाख. सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी 2 जिसका लोन वाज टेकन फॉर रिपेयर वाज 17,000, सो 17,000 अलाउ है. बट कंबाइन करके स्टिल यू कैन नॉट क्रॉस 2 lakh. You cannot cross 2 lakh, so that is allowed. तीनों केस एक बार देख लो, कॉपी करना है कॉपी कर लो, स्क्रीनशॉट लेना है स्क्रीनशॉट ले लो, देन वी विल प्रोसीड आगे. दिस हैज टू बी वेरी 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 मच क्लियर. कविता, खुशी, डाउट कहाँ है? So let's pick one illustration. Manas. Manas owns 2 house property. One at Bombay, wherein his family resides. Okay. And one at Delhi, which is unoccupied. Okay. He lives in Delhi for his, he lives in Chandigarh for the purpose of employment in a rented house. Okay. For the acquisition of house property at Bombay, he has taken a loan for 30 lakhs at 10% per annum on 1st April 21. He has not repaid any amount so far. In respect of house property at Delhi, he has taken a loan of rupees 5 lakhs at 11% on 1st October 21 towards repairs. Compute the deduction which would be available to him under section 24B for assessment year 23-24. Question ही income from house property निकालने का नहीं है. Question is to compute interest under section 24B. Now first of all my friends, यहाँ पे which house are self-occupied property? Which of the house are self-occupied property? One is the Bombay house and the Delhi house. Chandigarh house के लिए it does not matter to us. Why? Because it is a place in which he is living on rented accommodation. It is a place on which this guy is living on rented accommodation. So Bombay house and Delhi house has to be taken as self-occupied property. And दोनों में यही है, one in which the family is residing and another he is not able to take because of his employment. Now, बॉम्बे हाउस में टोटल इंटरेस्ट 30 lakhs पे 10% कितना हो गया? 3 lakhs. So this is my SOP 1, which is Bombay. So total interest is 3 lakhs, but maximum allowed is 2 lakhs. So interest SOP 1 का आ गया 2 lakh. कोई डाउट? SOP 2 में total interest is loan is taken on 1st October 21. ठीक है, 5 लाख 11% पे, तो इस साल तो पूरा अलाउ होगा 55,000. रिपेयर है 55,000 का लोन है, तो मैक्सिमम कितना अलाउड होगा गाइस? 30,000. बट दोनों को कंबाइन करके 2 and 30, the reduction maximum under section 24B for both self-occupied property in combination is 2 lakh. दो 2 lakh इसका भी अलाउड हो गया, 30,000 इसका भी, but maximum allowed is 2 lakh. The total interest deduction under section 24B for both the houses is restricted to 2 lakhs. जब आप रिटर्न फाइल करोगे, आप उसमें SOP 1 की डिटेल्स डालोगे, वहां पे 2 लाख वो आपको क्लेम करने देगा. ओके, जब आप रिटर्न फाइल करोगे उसमें SOP 2 का डिटेल्स डालोगे, वहां पे भी 30,000 would be allowed to be claimed. But the moment दोनों combined would happen, the maximum interest they will restrict to 2 lakhs, and the maximum loss from house property both combined, which prima facie you will say कि 2 lakhs and 30,000 respective है, would be restricted to 2 lakhs. Okay, now tell me where the doubt is or whether it is clear or not. आपको डिवाइड नहीं करना, it would be restricted to 2 lakhs. Vishali, all these conditions are सिंगल कंडीशन. या तो लोन बिफोर 1st April 99 हो, या रिपेयर हो, या कंस्ट्रक्शन पीरियड इज मोर देन 5 years, तब मैक्स 30,000 इंटरेस्ट वुड बी अलाउड. कविता, इज इट क्लियर? Not 27,500 Ritik, because 1st October 21 में लिया. हमारा क्वेश्चन इज फॉर 22-23, तो गड़बड़ नहीं करना प्लीज. So friends, what will you do? First, you will get for the self-occupied property. वहाँ पे no gross annual value, no municipal tax deduction, no standard deduction, nothing comes. So only focus is on how correct you calculate the interest. Interest आप जैसे letter property का करते हो, that way you have to calculate as in the interest accrued during the year plus pre-construction. Total once you calculate it, there is a ceiling limit. Ceiling limit है, threshold limit है, whatever you want to say, maximum limit है, whatever you want to say, it's one and the same thing. The maximum limit is 2 lakh for if the loan is taken for the purpose of construction, loan taken after 1st April 1999, and provided the construction is completed from within 5 years from the end of the financial year in which the loan was taken, then the maximum interest deduction would be allowed is 2 lakhs. If any of the conditions which I said did not get fulfilled. Yani the loan is for repair, or the loan was taken before 1st April 1999, or the construction was not completed within 5 years. So the maximum interest deduction allowed for the year is 30,000. So that is what is allowed to be claimed. But when two self-occupied properties are there and maximum interest which would be allowed for both combined would be 2 lakhs or 30,000 as the case may be. If on both the properties only repair loans are going, so the maximum interest deduction would allowed which would be allowed would be 30,000 combined. वहां पे प्लीज डू नॉट से कि 2 लाख बोला है तो 2 लाख आएगा, नहीं, इधर भी रिपेयर का चल रहा है, इधर भी रिपेयर का चल रहा है, दोनों का 30-30 सीलिंग लिमिट है, प्लस इन टोटो ऑल्सो 30 का सीलिंग लिमिट है. गॉट इट? सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टी का आ गया क्लियर. एलओपी वाज आल्सो क्लियर. एलओपी में क्या करना है, जे भी निकालना है, म्युनिसिपल टैक्सेस का डिडक्शन देना है, नेट एंड वैल्यू स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन एंड योर फाइनल इंटरेस्ट डिडक्शन, यू गेट टू इनकम फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी. ईशान, is it clear? Kushi, Sushil, is it clear? You can also refer to this table, which will make you a more clarity, which will make you more clear on your concept. वन एटी थ्री कहाँ से आया खुशी? You're talking about my example. Where is 183 coming from, guys? Ishan, if both the self-occupied property may, the loan which is going on is for repairs, so the maximum reduction allowed would be 30,000. Simple रखना है आपको, पहले सिंगल हाउस प्रॉपर्टी पे फोकस करना है, सिंगल सेल्फ ऑक्युपाइड प्रॉपर्टी पे उसका लिमिट ध्यान रखना है कि 2 मिलेगा या 30 मिलेगा या एक्चुअल मिलेगा, विच एवर इज लो. देन सेकंड सेल्फ ऑक्युपाइड प्रॉपर्टी में जाना है, उसका लिमिट ध्यान रखना है. देन कंबाइन करके चेक करना है कि कंस्ट्रक्शन रिपेयर का कॉम्बिनेशन है, मैक्सिमम इंटरेस्ट अलाउड वुड बी 2 lakhs. रिपेयर का कॉम्बिनेशन है, मैक्सिमम इंटरेस्ट अलाउड वुड बी 30,000. कंस्ट्रक्शन के देन ऑल्सो मैक्सिमम इंटरेस्ट अलाउड वुड बी 2 lakhs. एंड वैशाली, इसमें जो इंटरेस्ट आई एम टेलिंग यू इज फॉर the interest for the year and pre-construction period combined. अब आप वो pre-construction period जितना मर्जी साल का चल रहा है, that does not matter, but the pre-construction period का deduction which would be allowed would be divided by 5. अब मेरे पास एक ही एसओपी है ईशान, उस पर रिपेयर का लोन चल रहा है, देन ऑल्सो 30,000 इज द लिमिट. कंस्ट्रक्शन लोन, एक्विजिशन लोन का लिमिट इज 2 lakhs. Repair loan का limit is 30,000. So individually focus on both the properties first, as in property 1 construction है 2 lakhs, repair है 30,000. Then combine करके देखो कि whether it is crossing 2 lakhs if the combination is of construction repair, or whether it is crossing 30,000 if the combination is of. पहले दोनों का restriction करना है 2 lakhs and 30 पे respectively, then only come to total का restriction. Because otherwise you will do draw. आप बोलोगे कि एक में रिपेयर का लोन वो 55,000 का इंटरेस्ट एंड एक पे कंस्ट्रक्शन लोन पे मैम 1,10,000 का इंटरेस्ट, दोनों कंबाइन करके तो 2 लाख से नीचे है, तो टोटल विच शुड बी अलाउड. बट नहीं, total 1,10,000 plus 30, 140 would be allowed. Tell me the maximum interest which would be allowed in this case. Maximum deduction, okay, under section 24B. Every figure is on your screen. What is the total deduction allowed under section 24B for SOP 1 and SOP 2 combined? अगर ये सही कर लिया तो यहाँ से समझ आ जाएगा that you have got the concept right. The first one to answer correct is Ritik, and that is superb. Very good. Very good, Harshita. Very good, Ritik. 1,50,000 is the answer. 60 ye, 30 divided by 5, 60 ye. So 60 plus 60, 120. And iska maximum 30. So total combined is 150. अब यू विल नॉट आर्ग्यू कि मैम यहाँ पे 35,000 ले लेते ना, टोटल 2 लाख अलाउड है, नहीं, इसका पहले रिस्ट्रिक्शन करो, इसका रिस्ट्रिक्शन करो, दोनों कंस्ट्रक्शन वाले को 2 लाख के अंडर, रिपेयर वाले को 30 के अंडर, फिर दोनों कंबाइन करके 2 लाख मैक्स. भूमिका यू आंसर्ड फॉर फर्स्ट, सो दोनों कंबाइन करके 150. वेरी गुड दिनेश, वेरी गुड कविता, वेरी गुड वैशाली. अब आई होप अब कोई गड़बड़ नहीं करेगा इसमें, एंड ट्रस्ट मी, no one would give you so many questions and scenarios for you to relate to it. So if you are focused on the class, it would be pretty much clear. Very good, Komal, Sushil, everyone who give the correct answer, but the first one to give the correct answer was Ritik, so super. Now, just before we wrap up the class, two simple concepts, which questions which you might be having. First is, ma'am, agar house property outside India hai, whether it would be taxable in India? The answer is yes, it would be taxable. Whatever amount you're earning in the respective currency would be multiplied into the conversion rate and it would be taxable in India. वहां का जो property rate चल रहा है उसके according you will calculate the income outside India based on expected rent or actual rent in case of the let out property, and in case of the self-occupied property it would be nil. ठीक है, whatever property tax you're paying there उसके according you will calculate it. There is no differentiation, just the conversion has to be happen in Indian rates. अब आप बोलोगे कि मैम बाहर रेंट कंट्रोल एक्ट नहीं होगा, डज नॉट मैटर, जरूरी नहीं है that all figures are available. In the first question when we were calculating gross annual value, there was no problem in it. Gross annual value हमने जहाँ पे standard rent नहीं था, so we did not compare it with standard rent, we came directly to the result of expected rent. So similarly here also you don't have to worry कि there is no such value. आप fair rental value निकालो, वहाँ पे अगर municipal authorities नहीं है which वहां के according you come to fair rental value, that would be your expected rent. Then another concept is of composite rent. Composite rent क्या होता है student? अब many a time we have seen that along with rent you have to pay rent for other additional elements. So that additional elements can be for services or can be for assets. Services matlab that along with rent I am paying to the landlord a certain component of maintenance charges, a certain component of lift charges, guard, parking, whatever, those charges. So suppose the rent is 30K and another charges which we are receiving is 3K per month. Now, what would you take it as your actual rent, which would be 30? This 3,000 would go under your income from other sources or your income from PGBP as the case may be. So कहने का मतलब है composite rent मतलब when the rent comes in a combination of other elements of rent also. So along with house property rent, there is additional rent for services or there is additional rent for assets. Services का जब rent है तो services वाला rent will go under income from house property and PGBP, income from other sources of PGBP. House property में only the rent for the property would come. ठीक है, then एक केस आता है composite rent का. Now composite rent में एक assets के साथ, that is suppose I have let out the house, along with that I have let out the assets which are in the house. मतलब I am taking rent for the building, along with the building I am taking rent for the or for this flat, along with that I'm taking the rent for the ACs, for the geyser, for the gas fitting, whatever is there. ठीक है, so वहां पे component आते हैं separable and inseparable. Separable मतलब not the amount is separate. Separable का criteria is that the landlord will not let out the property or will let out the property without letting out the asset. That is separable. Separable का मतलब यहाँ पे it's not that you have a separate amount for the property part and the assets or the furniture or the fittings part. Separable यहाँ पे मतलब है the nature, that whether the landlord is ready to give the property without the assets, yes or no. If yes, then it is separable. If he is so determined that he will not give the house property without giving the assets, assets आपको लेने ही पड़ेंगे property के साथ. You have to take the assets along with the property or you have to take the other items along with the property. That is inseparable. Different agreement होना, different amount होना is not separable. Intent of the party should be whether he is ready to give it without those assets, yes or no, or the condition is that if you have to get the house property, you have to take the assets. That is inseparable. If the house property cannot be let out without the let out of assets, which comes under the category of inseparable, then the entire rent of property and assets total would go under the head income from income from other sources or your PGBP as the case may be. What did I say? When it is inseparable, that is the landlord will not accept letting out of property without letting of assets. तब it is inseparable, and inseparable होगा तो income from other sources या PGPP में जाएगा पूरा का पूरा. Even if I have separate amount for each, then also. So if 30K is for house property and 5,000 is for assets, so entire 35,000 would be taxed as other sources of PGBP and not as 30 for house property and 5 for other sources. नहीं, वो कब होगा? जब वो separable होगा कि 30 is for house property and 5,000 is for asset. Separable है तो 30 would go under house property, 5K would go under other sources or PGBP. Got it? Clear? So let's understand composite rent once again. Composite rent is a rent when the rent is combined with rent of other elements. Other elements can be services. Services के case में services like maintenance etc. उस केस में services के केस में services वाला income would be considered, or the rent for services or the charges for services wala income would be considered as income from other sources of PGBP as the case may be, and the part of the rent which is for house property would be considered as income from house property. But when the rent includes elements of assets, and assets are in the nature of inseparable, as in the landlord would not give the house without giving the assets along with it, then it is inseparable. If the landlord is okay that it is your choice whether you want to use the assets or not, that is separable. Even if the amounts are separate, even if the agreement are separate, it does not make any difference. So if the amount is inseparable, the entire amount would go under income from other sources of PGBP. It will not go under house property, even if the substantial amount is for house property. Separable होगा तो house property वाला part house property में, other assets वाला part under income from other sources or PGBP. Got it? Clear? So that's all from my side. Today we understood what charging section of 22 for house property say, which is section 22. Property and ownership both are the important criteria. Then we started understanding the concept of how do you compute the income for letter property, how do you compute the income from self-occupied property. Letter property mein you have to be careful about the expected rent and interest wala part mein remember the interest pura milega for the accrued period for the year and your pre-construction period in 1/5 installments. Then remember, municipal taxes will be only allowed on paid basis, interest on accrued, principal taxes on paid. ठीक है, स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन देना मत भूलना irrespective of the खर्चा happened during the year. Question आ सकता है that the actual expenditure are this, but you have to ignore them all. Self-occupied property में it's very simple, gross annual value is nil. No municipal tax deduction, no standard deduction, only deduction is for interest and only deduction is for interest. Interest अगर self-occupied property में है for construction loan or acquisition loan, provided it is after 1st April 1999 and provided the construction has happened within 5 years from the loan taken date, then the maximum interest allowed would be 2 lakhs. If the interest is for repairs or the loan was taken before 1st April 1999 or was the construction not completed within 5 years from the date of construction, from the end of the financial year in which the loan was taken, so the interest is 30,000. ठीक है, maximum 2 SOPs का deduction is allowed, which maximum 2 SOPs का value you can take as nil. When you are claiming deductions, the limit you have to remember is in total. So first you will see कि SOP 2 में कितना इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन आ रहा है, SOP 1 में कितना इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन आ रहा है, respective their criteria of loans. Once that is done, then combined together in total should not cross 2 lakhs. If one of the loan is for construction and another is for repair, combined in total should not cross 30,000 if both the loans are for repair. So Kushi, this answers your query. Okay. Then we understood the concept of incomes from property outside India and composite trade. So in the next class, first half, we will be covering scenario of deemed let out property, property vacant during the year, and property partially occupied for self-purpose, for self-occupancy and partially let out. Okay. And we will cover the concept of co-ownership and deemed ownership, and we will be finished up with our chapter. Ishan, it does not matter the properties made illegally, वो separate acts उनको matter करेंगे. Income tax को important is that income tax के criteria दे. Okay. Rent income goes in IOS, then what amount of standard deduction? No. If the rental income is going in standard income from other sources, Dinesh, very good question. Then uske criteria ke according standard deductions would be allowed, not from the criteria of income from house property. ये जो method of computation है, it's only for income from house property, not for income from other sources. Okay. So she says inseparable in case of assets, which item? It can be any item. Inseparable का ये मतलब नहीं है कि वो उखाड़े नहीं जा सकते. As in वो intact है. It does not mean that. Inseparable, Sushil, means that the landlord is not willing to give it without those assets. He says that you can only take the property on rent when you are taking these assets along. I am not giving the property on rent without those assets. That is inseparable, and it can be any asset. It can be geysers, AC, gas stove, anything, inverters, anything. Clear? Chalo. Great. It was a great class. Very good. Everyone was participative. Very appreciative for all of your efforts. Just please try to self-summarize the lessons which have been understood so that it remains in your mind, and please try to practice. Quickly make a note of it. Every illustration till illustration number illustration 4 till illustration 4, and you have to read it also. And illustration 6, illustration 4, illustration 6, and इसमें एक डीम लेट आउट प्रॉपर्टी वाला जो कॉन्सेप्ट होगा या स्टॉक एंड ट्रेड वाला कॉन्सेप्ट होगा, प्लीज स्किप इट. ओके. If there are 3 self-occupied property, then how will third property be treated is the starting point of our next class, Diksha. Don't worry. Thank you. Have a great time.